The dust-streaked stagecoach rattled into Albuquerque, New Mexico on a scorching July afternoon in 1878, and Olivia Zimmerman pressed her trembling hands against her worn traveling dress, certain that the man waiting for her would take one look and send her straight back to Philadelphia. She had lied in her letters, not about everything, but about enough that the guilt had gnawed at her throughout the entire journey west. When Preston Irving had written seeking a mail-order bride, describing his ranch and his life as a cattle rancher in the New Mexico territory, Olivia had painted herself as someone far more capable than she truly was. She had claimed to know how to cook elaborate meals when in truth she could barely manage toast without burning it. She had suggested she was strong and hardy when 3 flights of stairs left her winded. She had implied she was pretty when she knew her plain features, and mousy brown hair had never turned a single head back home. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside the dusty depot, and Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. Through the window, she could see the small crowd gathered to watch the stage arrive, as they probably did every week in this frontier town. The sun blazed mercilessly overhead, and even inside the coach, the heat was oppressive. She had never experienced anything like New Mexico's summer, and already she felt wilted and bedraggled. "Albuquerque," the driver called out, his voice gruff. "End of the line for some of you folks." Olivia took a shaky breath and gathered her single carpet bag. Everything she owned in the world fit into that one small bag. Her parents had died of typhoid 2 years ago, leaving her with nothing but debts. Her aunt had taken her in out of obligation rather than love, making it clear that Olivia was a burden. When her aunt's husband had started looking at Olivia with eyes that made her skin crawl, she had known she needed to leave. Preston Irving's advertisement in the newspaper had seemed like Providence, an answer to desperate prayers. Now, as she prepared to step out and meet him, she wondered if she had simply traded one nightmare for another. The driver opened the door and helped her down. The heat hit her like a physical force, the sun so bright she had to shield her eyes. Dust swirled around her skirts and she coughed, trying to catch her breath in the thin, dry air. "Miss Zimmerman." The voice was deep and warm, with a slight hesitation that suggested nervousness. Olivia turned and found herself looking up at a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the edges beneath his worn Stetson. He had striking blue-green eyes that studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Yes," she managed, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "Mr. Irving, Preston," he said quickly. "Please just call me Preston." He removed his hat, revealing more of that dark hair, and she noticed his hands were calloused and strong, a working man's hands. "I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was fine," Olivia lied, not mentioning the terrible food, the uncomfortable seats, the way her back ached from days of jostling, or the fear that had kept her awake most nights. Preston shifted his weight, clearly as nervous as she was. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and a mouth that looked like it smiled often, though right now it was pressed into an uncertain line. He appeared to be in his late 20s, perhaps 7 or 8 years older than her own 21 years. His clothes were clean but worn, practical ranch wear rather than Sunday best. "I have a wagon waiting," he said. "The ranch is about an hour's ride from town. I thought perhaps we could get married at the church here if that suits you, and then head out. Unless you would prefer to wait, get settled first, get to know each other better." There was such hope in his eyes when he suggested waiting that Olivia realized he was giving her an out, a chance to change her mind. But where would she go? She had exactly $3.20 to her name, not enough to buy passage back east even if she wanted to return to her aunt's hostile house. "Today is fine," she said quietly. Something flickered across Preston's face, disappointment perhaps, as if he had hoped she would ask for more time. But he nodded and offered her his arm. "Then let's find Reverend Matthews." The church was a small adobe structure with a simple wooden cross above the door. Inside, it was blessedly cooler, and Olivia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Reverend Matthews was an elderly man with kind eyes and weathered brown skin that spoke of Apache heritage mixed with Spanish ancestry. He greeted Preston warmly. Clearly they knew each other, and studied Olivia with a penetrating gaze that made her feel as though he could see right through to all her inadequacies. "You are certain about this, child?" he asked her gently in accented English. "Marriage is not something to enter lightly, especially to a man you have only just met." "I am certain," Olivia said, though her voice shook slightly. The Reverend looked at Preston. "And you, no doubts?" "None," Preston said firmly, but Olivia noticed he did not look at her when he said it, and her heart sank further. The ceremony was brief and simple. Preston had brought 2 ranch hands as witnesses, both weathered men who eyed Olivia curiously but kindly. When Preston slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band that was slightly too large, Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. This was not how she had imagined her wedding day as a little girl. No flowers, no beautiful dress, no family or friends, no love. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Matthews said. Preston hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to Olivia's cheek. His lips were warm, and he smelled of leather and soap, and something earthy she could not quite identify. Then he stepped back quickly, as if afraid he had overstepped. They signed the marriage certificate, Olivia's hand shaking so badly she could barely write her new name. Olivia Irving. It looked strange on the paper, these letters that now defined her entire identity. Outside the church, Preston helped her into a wagon that had seen better days but appeared sturdy enough. Her carpetbag went into the back, looking even more pathetic beside the supplies Preston had apparently picked up in town: flour, sugar, coffee, nails, and various other goods. The ride out to the ranch was quiet at first, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The landscape was unlike anything Olivia had ever seen, vast and open, with scrubby vegetation and distant mountains that shimmered in the heat. The sky seemed impossibly large, a dome of brilliant blue unmarred by a single cloud. "I should tell you about the ranch," Preston finally said, his voice breaking the silence. "It is not much, but it is mine. Well, ours now, I suppose. I have about 500 head of cattle, though I am hoping to build that up over the next few years. The house is small, just 3 rooms, but it is solid. I built it myself when I first came out here 5 years ago." "It sounds lovely," Olivia said, because she did not know what else to say. Preston glanced at her. "I know this must all be very different from Philadelphia. Your letters made it sound like you were eager for a change, but now that you are here, I wonder if perhaps the reality is more daunting than you expected." This was her chance. She could admit now that she had exaggerated, that she was not the capable frontier woman he had imagined. But fear kept her silent. If he knew the truth, would he send her back? Where would she go? "I am adjusting," she said carefully. "Everything is simply very new." "Of course," Preston said, and she thought she heard relief in his voice, as if he had been worried about something specific. As they rode, Preston pointed out various landmarks. A distinctive red rock formation, the path that led to a water source, the boundary markers of his land. Olivia tried to pay attention, but exhaustion was catching up with her and the heat made her head swim. "Are you feeling all right?" Preston asked suddenly, concern in his voice. "You have gone very pale." "Just tired," Olivia admitted, "and the heat is quite intense." Preston immediately pulled the wagon to a stop and reached behind the seat, producing a canteen. "Here, drink. I should have thought of this sooner. You are not accustomed to this climate. You must drink much more water than you would back east, especially in summer." Olivia took the canteen gratefully and drank. The water was warm but wonderful, and she had not realized how parched she was. "Thank you," she said, handing it back. "Keep it," Preston said. "Drink as much as you need. I have another." He studied her face with those intense eyes. "I should have warned you better in my letters about the conditions here. The heat, the dryness, the isolation. This is hard country, Olivia. Beautiful, but hard. I would not blame you if you found it overwhelming." There was something in his tone that made Olivia look at him more carefully. He sounded almost as if he expected her to be disappointed, as if he was bracing himself for her rejection. It occurred to her suddenly that perhaps Preston Irving had his own fears and insecurities about this arrangement. "I am stronger than I look," she said, and hoped it might become true through sheer force of will. Preston smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face and made her breath catch slightly. "I am glad to hear it," he said, and urged the horses forward again. The ranch, when they finally reached it, was indeed modest. The house was a single-story adobe structure with a covered porch and shuttered windows. Nearby were a barn, a chicken coop, and several corrals. A few horses grazed in one of the corrals, and Olivia could see cattle dotting the landscape in the distance. A windmill turned lazily in the breeze, and she could hear the creak of its blades. "Home," Preston said simply, bringing the wagon to a stop in front of the house. A large yellow dog came bounding up, tail wagging furiously. "That is Sunshine," Preston said with obvious affection. "She is supposed to be a cattle dog, but she is too friendly to be much use. I hope you do not mind dogs." "Not at all," Olivia said, and was rewarded with an enthusiastic face licking when she climbed down from the wagon. Despite everything, she laughed, and some of the tension in her chest eased. Preston looked pleased. "She likes you. That is a good sign." He grabbed her carpet bag and gestured toward the house. "Come on, I will show you around." Inside, the house was surprisingly neat for a bachelor's residence. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table and chairs, and open shelving that held dishes and supplies. A doorway led to what Preston explained was his bedroom, and another led to a small second room. "I have been sleeping in the spare room for the past month," Preston said, setting her bag down in what was clearly the main bedroom. "I thought you would want privacy until you are comfortable. I know this arrangement is unusual, and I do not want you to feel pressured about anything." Olivia stared at him, surprised. She had assumed, given that they were married, that he would expect his conjugal rights immediately. The fact that he was offering her time made something in her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "That is very considerate," she managed. Preston looked uncomfortable. "I just want you to know that I did not arrange this marriage for the wrong reasons. I need help with the ranch, that is true, but I also wanted a partner, someone to share this life with. I am hoping that in time we might build something real together, but I understand that takes time." Before Olivia could respond, there was a knock at the door. Preston frowned and went to answer it. A moment later, a woman's voice rang out, bright and cheerful. "Preston Irving, you did not think you could bring home a bride without me coming to meet her, did you?" A woman swept into the house, all energy and warmth. She was perhaps 35, with dark hair streaked with gray and laugh lines around her eyes. She was dressed practically in a split skirt and boots, and she looked at Olivia with frank curiosity. "I am Rosa Martinez," she said, extending her hand. "My husband Miguel and I have the ranch to the south." We heard in town that Preston finally went through with it and got himself a wife, and I told Miguel I would not wait another day to meet her. The menfolk can manage without us for an afternoon." Olivia shook her hand, feeling suddenly shy. "Olivia Irving," she said, the new name still strange on her tongue. Rosa's eyes softened. "You look exhausted, poor thing. When did you arrive?" "Just today. We were married this afternoon and came straight here." "Today?" Rosa turned to Preston with exasperation. "Preston, she has been traveling for days, gets married, and you bring her immediately to this isolated ranch. The poor girl needs time to catch her breath." Preston looked sheepish. "I offered to wait, but she said today was fine." "Of course she said it was fine. She probably had nowhere else to go," Rosa said bluntly, and Olivia felt her face flush because it was absolutely true. Rosa turned back to her. "Never mind, you are here now and we will make the best of it. Have you eaten?" "Not since this morning," Olivia admitted. "Then I will cook," Rosa declared. "Preston, go tend to your animals and give us women some time to talk, and bring me some eggs from the coop." To Olivia's surprise, Preston did not argue. He simply nodded, grabbed his hat and headed out, Sunshine trotting at his heels. Once he was gone, Rosa turned to Olivia with a kind smile. "Sit down before you fall down," she commanded gently. "You look ready to collapse." Olivia sank into one of the chairs gratefully. Rosa moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, clearly having been here before. She started a fire in the stove and began pulling out ingredients. "How much did you tell him in your letters?" Rosa asked casually. "About your circumstances, your skills, all of that." Olivia hesitated, then decided that Rosa seemed like someone who would appreciate honesty. "Not much that was true," she admitted quietly. "I made myself sound far more capable than I am." To her surprise, Rosa laughed. "Of course you did. You think you are the first mail-order bride to exaggerate in her letters. Half the women who come west paint themselves as pioneer heroines when the truth is they are running from something or desperate for a fresh start." Her expression gentled. "There is no shame in that, child. What matters is what you do now that you are here." "But what if I disappoint him?" Olivia whispered, voicing her deepest fear. "What if I cannot do the things he needs? What if he realizes I am not what he wanted?" Rosa paused in her preparations and came to sit across from Olivia. She took the younger woman's hands in her own work-roughened ones. "Let me tell you something about Preston Irving. That man has been alone on this ranch for 5 years, working himself to the bone. He is kind and decent and honest to a fault. When he decided to look for a wife, every busybody in 3 counties tried to match him with someone. But he insisted on doing it his own way, through letters, because he wanted someone who chose this life deliberately, not someone who was here because their family pushed them into it." "But I do not know anything about ranch life," Olivia protested. "You will learn," Rosa said firmly. "We all did. I was a shopkeeper's daughter from Santa Fe when I married Miguel. I had never been on a ranch in my life. The first time I tried to milk a cow, I ended up covered in manure and crying in the barn. But you know what? I learned. And you will too." "What if I cannot cook?" Olivia asked. "I told him I could make all sorts of things, but the truth is, I can barely boil water without disaster." Rosa laughed again. "Then I will teach you. It is not magic, Olivia. It is just practice and patience. Now watch what I do." For the next hour, Rosa showed Olivia how to make a simple but hearty meal of eggs, beans, and cornbread. She explained each step carefully, answering Olivia's questions and encouraging her attempts. By the time Preston returned with a basket of eggs, the house smelled wonderful, and Olivia felt marginally less terrified. They ate together, the 3 of them, and Rosa regaled them with stories about the territory and the other ranchers in the area. Olivia learned that Rosa and Miguel had 3 grown children who had all moved to California, that there was a small community of ranchers who helped each other during difficult times, and that Preston was well respected among them for his honesty and hard work. "He helped us through a terrible winter 2 years ago," Rosa said, her voice warm with gratitude. "Half our cattle were dying, and Preston rode through a blizzard to bring us feed from his own stores, even though it meant he would be short himself. That is the kind of man you have married, Olivia." Preston looked embarrassed. Anyone would have done the same. "But they did not," Rosa said firmly. "You did." After Rosa left, promising to return in a few days to check on Olivia, the house fell quiet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Olivia stood on the porch, watching the colors and feeling overwhelmed by the beauty and strangeness of it all. Preston joined her, standing a respectful distance away. "It is quite a sight, is it not?" he said quietly. "The sunsets here, I never get tired of them." "It is beautiful," Olivia agreed. "Everything is so different from Philadelphia, so open and wild. Do you miss it?" Preston asked. "The city?" Olivia thought about her aunt's cold house, the suffocating streets, the feeling of having no future and no hope. "No," she said honestly. "I do not miss it at all." Preston seemed to relax slightly. "I am glad. I know today has been overwhelming, and I want you to know that I appreciate you being here. I know this was not an easy decision." Olivia felt guilt twist in her stomach. He was being so kind, so considerate, and he had no idea how much she had deceived him. "Preston," she began, then stopped, not sure how to continue. "What is it?" he asked gently. "I need to tell you something," she said, forcing herself to be brave. "In my letters, I was not entirely truthful about my abilities. I made myself sound more capable than I am. I cannot cook well. I have never done any kind of ranch work, and I am not particularly strong or hardy. I am sorry for deceiving you, but I was desperate to leave Philadelphia, and I was afraid you would not choose me if you knew the truth." There was a long silence. Olivia could not bring herself to look at Preston's face, terrified of what she might see there. Anger, disappointment, disgust. "Olivia," he said finally, his voice rough. "Look at me." She forced herself to meet his eyes. To her astonishment, he did not look angry. He looked relieved. "I have a confession too," he said. "I was not entirely truthful in my letters either. I made this ranch sound more prosperous than it is. The truth is, I am barely breaking even most months. I work from dawn to dusk just to keep things running. The house is small and plain, nothing like what you probably grew up with. And I am not exactly a catch as a husband. I am just a man trying to make a life in hard country, and I was afraid that if I told you the whole truth, you would never come." Olivia stared at him, and suddenly she started to laugh. After a moment, Preston joined her, and they stood on the porch in the fading light, laughing at their mutual deception and relief. "So we are both liars," Olivia said when she could catch her breath. "It seems so," Preston agreed, still smiling. "But here is what I think. I think we can choose to start fresh right now with honesty. No more pretending to be something we are not. We will learn together, help each other, and see what we can build. What do you say?" Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, a weight she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. "I say yes," she said. "I would like that very much." Preston held out his hand, and after a moment, Olivia took it. His grip was warm and firm, calloused but gentle. "Partners then," he said. "Partners," Olivia agreed. That night, Olivia lay in the bedroom that was now hers, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling around her. In the distance, cattle lowed softly. The wind whispered through the eaves. She could hear Preston moving quietly in the other room, preparing for bed. She was married to a man she barely knew, in a place completely foreign to her, with no idea if she could actually make this life work. But for the first time in years, Olivia felt something like hope. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of roosters crowing and early sunlight streaming through the window. She dressed quickly in one of her practical dresses and ventured into the main room. Preston was already up, dressed for work, and had coffee brewing on the stove. "Good morning," he said, looking pleased to see her. "I hope the roosters did not startle you too badly. You will get used to them." "Good morning," Olivia replied, smoothing her hair self-consciously. "What time is it?" "A little past 5, Preston said. "Ranch hours start early, but you do not need to get up this early if you would rather sleep. I know you are still recovering from your journey." "I want to help," Olivia said firmly. "If I am going to be a rancher's wife, I need to learn how to be useful." Preston poured her a cup of coffee and handed it to her. "All right then. How about we start with something simple? I need to feed the chickens and collect eggs. After that, I will show you around the property properly, and you can decide what tasks you would like to take on." The morning air was cool and fresh, a welcome relief from yesterday's oppressive heat. Preston explained that summer days started hot and only got hotter, so most ranch work needed to be done in the early morning and evening when possible. He showed her the chicken coop, explaining how much feed to give them and how to watch for signs of illness or distress. "The eggs are a good source of income," he said, gently lifting a hen to retrieve the eggs beneath her. "I take them into town once a week and trade them for supplies. In the fall, we butcher some of the older hens and preserve the meat for winter." Olivia watched carefully, memorizing every detail. The chickens were suspicious of her, as if they knew she was an imposter, but she managed to collect several eggs without breaking any. From there, Preston showed her the vegetable garden, which was struggling in the summer heat despite his best efforts to water it regularly. "I am not much of a gardener," he admitted. "I can keep cattle alive, but vegetables are another matter entirely." "My mother had a garden," Olivia said, surprised by the memory surfacing. "I used to help her when I was young before she got sick. I remember she said vegetables need mulch in hot weather to keep the soil from drying out too quickly." Preston looked interested. "Mulch?" "Straw or dead grass or leaves spread around the base of the plants," Olivia explained. "It helps hold moisture in the soil." "That makes sense," Preston said thoughtfully. "There is plenty of old straw in the barn. If you wanted to work on the garden, that would be a great help." Fresh vegetables are a rare luxury out here. They spent the rest of the morning touring the property. Preston showed her the cattle, explaining how he rotated them between pastures to prevent overgrazing. He pointed out the fence lines that constantly needed mending, the water sources that had to be maintained, the countless small tasks that made up ranch life. "It is overwhelming, is it not?" he said, watching her face. "There is always more work than hours in the day." "It is a lot," Olivia admitted, "but I can see why you love it. There is something satisfying about it, building something with your own hands." Preston's face lit up. "Exactly. Back east, I worked in a factory for years. Same thing every day, making parts I never saw assembled for people I would never meet. Here, everything I do matters. I can see the results directly. It is hard work, but it is mine." Olivia understood that feeling more than she could express. The desire to build something of your own, to have control over your own life, to matter. Over the following days, Olivia threw herself into learning ranch life. Rosa came by frequently, teaching her to cook basic meals and giving advice on managing a household in frontier conditions. Olivia learned to make bread that did not come out like rocks, stew that was actually edible, and coffee strong enough to satisfy a working man. She took over care of the garden, mulching the struggling plants and carefully watering them in the cooler hours. To her delight, they began to recover, and within a week she harvested the first tomatoes, warm from the sun and sweet as candy. "These are incredible," Preston said, biting into one at dinner. "I have not had fresh tomatoes this good since I left Virginia." "You are from Virginia?" Olivia asked, realizing how little she actually knew about his past. Preston nodded. "A small town in the mountains. My family had a farm there, but when my parents died, my brother inherited it. I was the youngest of 4 boys, and there was not enough land to support all of us. So I came west to make my own way." "Do you miss them?" Olivia asked. "Your brothers?" "Sometimes," Preston admitted, "but we were never close. They saw me as extra labor, not as family. Out here, I can be my own man." He looked at her curiously. "What about you? You mentioned your parents died, but do you have other family?" Olivia hesitated, then decided to continue their pact of honesty. "An aunt in Philadelphia. She took me in after my parents died, but she made it clear I was a burden. Her husband made me uncomfortable in ways I cannot quite articulate, but I knew I needed to leave." Preston's jaw tightened. "Did he hurt you?" "He never touched me," Olivia said quickly. "But the way he looked at me, the things he said when my aunt was not around, I knew it was only a matter of time before he tried. That is why I answered your advertisement. I was running away as much as running toward something new." Preston reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her since their wedding day, and Olivia felt warmth spread through her at the contact. "You never have to go back there," he said firmly. "This is your home now for as long as you want it to be. I will never let anyone hurt you or make you feel unsafe." Looking into his earnest eyes, Olivia believed him. Something shifted in her chest, a tiny seed of feeling that she was not quite ready to name. As July gave way to August, Olivia settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She rose early with Preston, fed the chickens, tended the garden, and prepared meals. In the afternoons, when the heat was most intense, she worked on mending clothes and organizing the household while Preston rested briefly before returning to his chores. They fell into an easy companionship, talking over meals about the day's events and their hopes for the ranch. Preston had dreams of expanding his herd, building a bigger barn, perhaps even buying the adjacent property if it ever came up for sale. Olivia found herself caught up in his vision, adding her own ideas about what they could do with more land. "We could have a proper orchard," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Apple trees do well in this climate if they have enough water. And we could expand the garden, grow enough vegetables to sell in town along with the eggs." "I like the way you think," Preston said, smiling at her. "You are already talking like a rancher." Olivia felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. She was changing, she realized. The fearful, uncertain woman who had arrived in Albuquerque was slowly being replaced by someone stronger, more confident. The physical work was making her stronger too. Her arms no longer ached after carrying water buckets, and she could work in the garden for hours without exhaustion. One afternoon, Rosa arrived with news. "There is a dance in town next Saturday," she announced. "Everyone will be there. It is the social event of the summer, and you two need to come." Preston looked uncertain. "I am not much for dancing." "Nonsense," Rosa said firmly. "You need to introduce your wife properly to the community, and Olivia needs to meet the other women. Some of them are also from back east and can offer friendship and advice." She turned to Olivia. "Do you have a nice dress?" Olivia thought of her meager wardrobe. "Not really. Everything I have is practical work clothes." "Then we will make you one," Rosa declared. "I have fabric I have been saving for something special. Come to my ranch tomorrow and we will get started." The next day, Olivia rode to the Martinez ranch with Preston. It was her first time on a horse since arriving, and Preston had been patient with her inexperience, teaching her the basics of riding on their gentlest mare. The ride was only about 3 miles, but to Olivia it felt like an adventure. The Martinez ranch was larger than Preston's, with a bigger house and more outbuildings. Miguel Martinez greeted them warmly, a stocky man with kind eyes and a ready laugh. While Preston and Miguel talked about cattle and water rights, Rosa whisked Olivia inside. The fabric Rosa had was beautiful, a deep blue cotton that brought out the hints of amber in Olivia's brown eyes. Together, they worked on cutting and sewing, with Rosa showing Olivia techniques her mother had taught her. As they worked, they talked. "You look happier," Rosa observed. "Less frightened than when you first arrived." "I feel happier," Olivia admitted. "Preston is kind and the work is satisfying in a way I never expected. I feel useful here." "And how are things between you two?" Rosa asked delicately. "Forgive me for being blunt, but you are sleeping in separate rooms still, yes?" Olivia felt her face heat. "Yes, Preston said he wants to give me time to not rush things." "And how do you feel about that?" Rosa asked, her hands never pausing in their stitching. Olivia considered the question carefully. "At first I was relieved, but now I find myself wanting more. When he touches my hand or stands close, I feel something I cannot quite name." "Is that strange?" Rosa smiled warmly. "Not strange at all, child. That is attraction, the beginning of love. Preston is a good man, and you are seeing that goodness every day. It is natural to develop feelings." She paused in her work. "Have you told him how you feel?" "No," Olivia said, suddenly shy. "What if he does not feel the same way? What if he still sees me only as a practical arrangement?" "I have seen the way he looks at you," Rosa said wisely. "Trust me, he feels the same. But men can be foolish about these things. They need encouragement sometimes, permission to show their feelings. Perhaps the dance will give you an opportunity." By Saturday, the dress was finished, and Olivia could hardly believe how pretty she looked in it. The blue brought out colors in her face she had never noticed before, and Rosa had shown her how to arrange her hair in a more flattering style. When Preston saw her dressed for the dance, he stopped dead in his tracks. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "I mean, you always look lovely, but tonight you are just stunning." Olivia felt warmth spread through her entire body. "Thank you," she said softly. "You look very handsome, too." Preston had dressed in his best clothes, a dark suit that was a bit worn but clean and well-maintained. His dark hair was neatly combed and he had shaved carefully. He offered her his arm, and together they rode into town in the wagon, the evening air cooling as the sun set. The dance was being held in the largest building in Albuquerque, a community hall that served multiple purposes. By the time they arrived, it was already crowded with people. A fiddle band was playing lively music, and couples were dancing in the center of the room while others stood around the edges, talking and laughing. Olivia felt suddenly nervous, faced with so many strangers. But Rosa was there immediately, pulling her into a group of women and making introductions. There was Martha Thompson, whose husband ran the general store, Elena Cordova, married to a sheep rancher, and Sarah Miller, whose husband was the town doctor. "Finally, another Easterner," Sarah said warmly. She was a petite woman with intelligent gray eyes. "I am from Boston originally. How are you finding the adjustment?" "Challenging but good," Olivia said honestly. "Everything is so different here." "You will get used to it," Elena assured her. She was heavily pregnant and resting in a chair while her husband brought her drinks. "I was born here, and I still find ranch life challenging sometimes. But there is a freedom here you do not find back east, no." The women welcomed Olivia warmly, asking about her journey and her first weeks on the ranch. They offered advice, shared stories, and made her feel less alone. It was a relief to know there were other women facing similar challenges, that she was not the only one learning as she went. When Preston finally came to claim her for a dance, Olivia went willingly. "I should warn you," she said as he led her to the floor, "I am not a very good dancer." "Neither am I," Preston admitted with a grin. "We will fumble through together." In fact, Preston was a better dancer than he claimed, guiding Olivia through the steps with patient confidence. She stumbled a few times, but he simply held her more securely, and soon she was laughing, forgetting to be self-conscious. "You are a natural," Preston said, spinning her gently. "Or maybe I am just a good teacher." "Very modest," Olivia teased, and was rewarded with a laugh that made her heart skip. They danced several dances, and between them, Preston introduced her to other ranchers and townspeople. Everyone was curious about the new bride, but their interest seemed genuine rather than intrusive. Olivia found herself relaxing, enjoying the music and the company. During a break, they stepped outside for fresh air. The night was clear and cool, stars blazing overhead in multitudes Olivia had never seen in Philadelphia. Preston stood close beside her, and Olivia was acutely aware of his warmth, the solid presence of him. "Are you having a good time?" he asked softly. "A wonderful time," Olivia said honestly. "Everyone has been so welcoming. I was nervous about meeting so many people at once, but they have made me feel accepted." "They like you," Preston said. "I could tell. Rosa said several of the women were already planning to invite you to a quilting circle they have." "I would like that," Olivia said. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "Preston, I want to thank you." "For what?" he asked, surprised. "For being patient with me, for giving me time to adjust, for being kind." She turned to face him fully. "When I came here, I was so afraid. I thought I would disappoint you, that you would regret choosing me. But you have made me feel valued and safe, and I want you to know how much that means to me." Preston's expression softened. "Olivia, you have not disappointed me, not even slightly. In fact, you have exceeded every hope I had when I sent for a bride." "But I lied to you about my abilities," Olivia protested. "I was not the capable woman you thought you were getting." "You are more," Preston said firmly. "You are brave and hardworking and determined. You jumped into ranch life without complaint, learned new skills without being asked, and you have made that house feel like a home for the first time since I built it. You have not disappointed me. You have amazed me." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "You really mean that?" "Every word," Preston said. He reached up and gently cupped her face in his hand. "I know we married under unusual circumstances, but I want you to know that I am grateful every day that you answered my advertisement. You have made my life better in ways I did not even know I was missing." "I feel the same way," Olivia whispered. "I came here out of desperation, but I have found something I never expected. I have found a home and a purpose and maybe something more." "Something more?" Preston asked, his voice barely audible. Olivia took a breath and decided to be brave. "Feelings," she admitted. "For you. I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I find myself wanting more, wanting to be closer to you, to be a wife to you in more than just name." Preston's thumb stroked her cheek gently. "I have been holding back because I did not want to pressure you," he said. "But if you are saying you are ready, then you should know that I have been falling for you since the day you arrived and laughed when sunshine knocked you over with kisses. You are everything I hoped for and more than I dreamed possible." "Kiss me," Olivia said, and Preston did. It was nothing like the chaste peck he had given her on their wedding day. This kiss was deep and thorough, full of all the longing and affection that had been building between them for weeks. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck and Preston pulled her close, and for a long moment the rest of the world fell away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I think," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "that we should head home." "I think that is an excellent idea," Olivia agreed. The ride back to the ranch seemed to take forever, though in reality it was the same hour it always took. They talked quietly, hands clasped between them on the wagon seat, about everything and nothing. About their hopes for the future, about the life they wanted to build together, about how grateful they both were to have found each other in such an unlikely way. When they reached the ranch, Preston helped Olivia down from the wagon with exquisite care, as if she were made of something precious and fragile. Inside the house, he lit lamps while Olivia stood in the center of the main room, suddenly nervous again. "We do not have to rush," Preston said gently, coming to stand before her. "We have the rest of our lives." "I know," Olivia said, "but I do not want to wait any more. I want to be your wife in every way." Preston smiled and kissed her again, tenderly this time, and led her to the bedroom that had been hers alone. That night, they came together with a sweetness and passion that surprised them both, two people who had been strangers finding in each other a completeness neither had known was possible. Afterward, lying in Preston's arms, Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks. Preston noticed immediately, concerned. "Did I hurt you? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Olivia said, laughing through her tears. "I am happy, Preston, happier than I have ever been in my entire life. I never thought I would find you, find a place where I truly belong." Preston held her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I was so lonely before you came," he admitted. "I did not even realize how lonely until you were here, and suddenly the house did not feel empty anymore. You are my partner, Olivia, in every sense of the word, and I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I love you." "I love you too," Olivia whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The next morning they woke tangled together, sunlight streaming through the window. There was work to be done, as there always was on a ranch, but for a few precious minutes they simply held each other, savoring the new depth of their connection. "I suppose we should get up," Preston said reluctantly. "The chickens will be wondering where their breakfast is." "They can wait a few more minutes," Olivia said, snuggling closer. "I want to savor this." Preston chuckled and tightened his arms around her. "I like the way you think, Mrs. Irving." Eventually, they did rise and go about their morning chores, but everything felt different now. The casual touches as they passed each other, the lingering glances, the shared smiles all spoke of their deeper connection. Even the work seemed lighter, knowing they were truly building this life together. Over the following weeks, their bond only deepened. They worked side by side during the day and held each other at night, sharing dreams and fears and hopes. Olivia continued to grow in confidence and skill, taking on more responsibilities around the ranch. She learned to ride better, to help move cattle between pastures, to spot signs of illness in the animals, and to anticipate what needed to be done without being asked. In September, unexpected trouble arrived. A drought that had been threatening all summer intensified, and the water sources on the ranch began to dry up. Preston worked from before dawn until after dark, digging deeper wells and hauling water to the cattle. Olivia helped however she could, but she could see the strain wearing on him. "We need rain," Preston said one evening, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "If this continues much longer, I will have to sell off some of the herd, and that will set us back years." "Then we will manage," Olivia said firmly. "We will do what we have to do. We are partners, remember. Whatever comes, we face it together." Preston pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I do not know what I did to deserve you," he murmured into her hair. "You put an advertisement in a newspaper and took a chance on a complete stranger," Olivia said, trying to lighten the mood. "Very romantic of you." That surprised a laugh out of him, which had been her intention. They would face this challenge like they had faced everything else, together. The drought broke in mid-September with a storm that rolled in from the mountains. Olivia and Preston stood on the porch, watching the rain come down in sheets, both of them grinning like children. The relief was palpable, not just for them but for all the ranchers in the territory. With the crisis past, Preston began to relax again. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, he turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the future, about what we want to build here. I was wondering how you feel about children." Olivia felt her heart skip. They had not discussed this yet, though she had been wondering about it herself. "I would like children," she said carefully. "Someday when the time is right. What about you?" "I would like that too," Preston said, his face lighting up. "I always imagined having a family, children to pass the ranch on to teach everything I have learned. But only if you want it too. I will not pressure you." "I want it," Olivia assured him. "Not right this moment, perhaps. I would like a bit more time to get established, to make sure the ranch is on solid footing. But yes, Preston, I want to have children with you." Preston kissed her tenderly, his hand gentle on her face. "I love you so much," he whispered. "Sometimes I still cannot believe you are real, that you are here, that this is our life." "I am very real," Olivia said, laughing softly, "and I am not going anywhere." October brought cooler weather and the autumn work of preparing for winter. Preston and Olivia worked together to preserve vegetables from the garden, stockpile firewood, and make sure the barn was weatherproof. Rosa and Miguel came for a visit, bringing news from town and supplies to trade. "You look good," Rosa said to Olivia when they had a moment alone. "Happy and healthy. Ranch life suits you." "It does," Olivia agreed. "I never imagined I could be this content. Every day I wake up grateful for this life, for Preston, for the chance to build something meaningful." "I am glad," Rosa said warmly. "Not every mail-order bride's story ends this well. You two are fortunate to have found each other." In November, Olivia realized her monthly courses had not come. At first, she thought it was the stress of ranch life or the physical work affecting her body. But when another week passed and she began feeling slightly queasy in the mornings, she began to suspect the truth. She waited another week to be certain before telling Preston. On a cool November evening, after they had finished supper and were sitting by the fire, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Preston," she said softly, "I think I am with child." Preston froze, his eyes going wide. "Truly," he whispered. "You are certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor," Olivia said. "I have all the signs. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Preston's face broke into the biggest smile Olivia had ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of glass. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby. Olivia, this is the happiest day of my life." "Happier than our wedding day," Olivia teased. "Different happy," Preston said, kissing her soundly. "Every day with you is a gift, but knowing we created a life together, that our family is growing, it is more than I ever dared hope for." They decided to keep the news to themselves for a little while longer, but it was hard to contain their excitement. Preston became even more protective, constantly asking if Olivia was feeling all right, if she needed to rest, if she should be doing lighter work. It was both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "I am pregnant, not made of porcelain," Olivia finally said one morning when Preston tried to prevent her from carrying a bucket of feed to the chickens. "I can still do my normal work. The doctor will tell us if there is anything I need to avoid." They rode into town together to see Dr. Miller, who confirmed what Olivia already knew. She was about 2 months along, and the baby would likely arrive in early June. Dr. Miller's wife, Sarah, was delighted with the news and immediately began offering advice and support. "You are in good hands with Preston," Sarah said warmly. "And we women will make sure you have everything you need. Childbirth on a ranch is different from back east, but we have helped many women through it." As winter set in, Olivia's pregnancy became more obvious. She experienced occasional sickness in the mornings, but nothing too severe. Preston was attentive and loving, constantly asking what she needed, rubbing her feet when they ached, and talking to her growing belly about the ranch and the life they would share. Christmas was a quiet affair, just the two of them, but it was perfect. They exchanged simple gifts. Olivia had sewn Preston a new shirt, and he had carved her a beautiful jewelry box from mesquite wood. They cooked a special meal and spent the day together, talking about the future and imagining what their child would be like. "Boy or girl, it does not matter to me," Preston said, his hand resting on Olivia's rounded stomach. "As long as you both are healthy, I will be the happiest man alive." "I hope they have your eyes," Olivia said, running her fingers through Preston's dark hair. "That beautiful blue-green color." "I hope they have your determination," Preston countered. "Your courage and your kind heart." The winter was relatively mild, though there were a few cold snaps that kept them close to the fire. Olivia found herself loving these quiet evenings, sitting with Preston, feeling the baby move inside her and talking about everything and nothing. They discussed names, debated about how to raise a child on a ranch, and dreamed about the future. In February, a late winter storm rolled through, bringing snow to the high country and cold rain to the ranch. Preston worried about the cattle, spending long hours checking on them and making sure they had shelter. Olivia did what she could to help, but her growing belly made some tasks more difficult. One afternoon, Preston came in from the cold, his face gray with worry. "One of the mares is in trouble," he said. "She is trying to foal, but something is wrong. I may need to go get Miguel to help." "Let me see if I can help first," Olivia said. She had been reading everything she could about animal husbandry, preparing to be more useful on the ranch. Together they went to the barn. The mare was indeed in distress, sweating and rolling. Preston examined her carefully and determined the foal was breech. It was a delicate situation, but Olivia remembered reading about how to handle it. Working together, with Olivia coaching from the book and Preston doing the physical work, they managed to turn the foal and deliver it safely. When the tiny horse finally emerged, wet and shaky but alive, both Olivia and Preston were exhausted but elated. The mare immediately began cleaning her foal, and Preston turned to Olivia with awe in his eyes. "You saved them," he said. "Your knowledge and quick thinking saved both of them." "We saved them," Olivia corrected. "Together, like we do everything." Preston pulled her carefully into his arms, mindful of her belly. "Have I told you recently that I love you?" "Not in the last hour," Olivia said with a smile, "but I never get tired of hearing it." As spring arrived, Olivia's due date grew closer. She had to stop doing some of the heavier ranch work, which frustrated her, but she found other ways to contribute. She kept detailed records of the ranch's accounts, something Preston had been neglecting. She organized supplies, planned improvements for the house, and spent time preparing for the baby's arrival. Rosa and several other ranch wives came to help her sew baby clothes and prepare a corner of the bedroom as a nursery. The women shared stories of their own births, offering advice and reassurance. For Olivia, who had felt so alone when she first arrived in the territory, the support of this community of women was invaluable. "You are not alone in this," Rosa told her firmly. "When your time comes, we will be here. You have family now, even if it is not the family you were born into. In late May, Olivia woke in the early morning hours with the first pangs of labor. She touched Preston's shoulder, and he was instantly awake. "It is time," she said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the fear suddenly coursing through her. Preston was out of bed immediately, helping her up, bringing her water, asking 100 questions. "Are you all right? How far apart are the pains? Should I ride for the doctor now or wait?" "Preston," Olivia said, grabbing his hand. "Breathe. We have time. The pains are still far apart, but yes, you should send someone for Dr. Miller and Sarah, and please get Rosa if you can." Preston nodded, suddenly focused and calm. He helped Olivia into a comfortable position, then rode out to get help. Miguel arrived first and stayed with Olivia while Preston rode for the doctor and Rosa. The labor was long and difficult, as first births often are. Rosa arrived and took charge, coaching Olivia through the pains, offering water and encouragement. Preston hovered nearby, looking pale and worried, holding Olivia's hand whenever she reached for him. "You are so strong," he kept saying. "You can do this. I love you so much." Finally, as dawn broke on a beautiful June morning, their son was born. He was tiny and red-faced and had a powerful set of lungs. Dr. Miller placed the baby on Olivia's chest, and she looked down at the small life they had created, tears streaming down her face. "A boy," she whispered. "Preston, we have a son." Preston was crying too, his hand gentle as he touched the baby's dark hair. "He is perfect," he said, his voice breaking. "You are perfect. I love you both so much." They named him Matthew Irving, and he was the light of their lives. Preston proved to be a devoted father, getting up with Olivia for night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours simply holding his son and talking to him about the ranch and the world. "He is too young to understand any of this," Olivia said one evening, watching Preston show the baby the sunset from the porch. "I know," Preston said with a grin, "but it is never too early to start teaching him about the important things." Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Olivia balanced caring for Matthew with her other responsibilities, and Preston hired a young man to help with some of the heavier ranch work so he could spend more time with his family. The ranch continued to prosper, and by the fall, they had expanded the herd and made improvements to the property. On a cool October evening, almost exactly 2 years after Olivia had arrived in Albuquerque, she and Preston sat on the porch with Matthew asleep between them. The sky was painted with the brilliant colors of sunset, and the air smelled of grass and dust and home. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not answered my advertisement?" Preston asked quietly. Olivia shuddered. "Sometimes, but not often. I do not like to imagine it. I would probably still be in Philadelphia, trapped in my aunt's house, afraid and alone." "I think about what my life would have been like without you," Preston said. "I would still be here, working the ranch alone, coming home to an empty house every night. I would not have known what I was missing, but I would have been missing everything that matters." "You would have found someone else eventually," Olivia said. "Some other woman would have answered your advertisement." "Maybe," Preston agreed, "but it would not have been you, and I cannot imagine anyone else making me as happy as you do or being as perfect a partner for me as you are." He reached over and took her hand. "You came here afraid you would disappoint me, remember, worried that you were not the capable frontier woman I was expecting." "I remember," Olivia said softly. "I was terrified. But look at you now," Preston said, his voice full of wonder and pride. "Look at everything you have accomplished, everything you have become. You learned to cook, to work the ranch, to handle hardship and drought and isolation. You gave me a son, made this house a home, and turned a lonely ranch into a family. You did not disappoint me, Olivia. You exceeded every hope I had when I sent that advertisement, You are everything I wanted and so much more than I ever dreamed possible." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "I love you," she whispered. "I love this life, this ranch, our son, and most of all, I love you." "I love you too," Preston said, leaning over to kiss her gently. "Always and forever." As the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in impossible colors, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. She had come west as a frightened young woman running from an impossible situation, and she had found not just safety but love, purpose, and a home in every sense of the word. The ranch stretched out before them, theirs to build and nurture and pass on to future generations. Matthew stirred slightly in his sleep, and Olivia reached down to touch his soft hair, marveling at the miracle of him. Life on the ranch was not always easy. There would be more droughts, hard winters, and challenges to face. But they would face them together, as partners, as lovers, as a family. And that made all the difference. Years passed, and the ranch continued to thrive. Matthew grew into a sturdy, curious child who followed his father everywhere, learning about cattle and horses and the land. When he was 3, Olivia gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, both with Preston's striking eyes and Olivia's determined spirit. The house that had once seemed adequate for one man now bulged with family, so Preston spent a summer expanding it, adding 2 more rooms and a larger kitchen. Rosa and Miguel remained close friends, celebrating holidays together and helping each other through difficult times. The community of ranchers and townsfolk became like an extended family, supporting each other through droughts, hard winters, and the occasional cattle rustlers or horse thieves that plagued the territory. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Preston gave Olivia a gift, a deed to the adjacent property they had talked about years earlier. The previous owner had died, and Preston had managed to purchase the land, doubling the size of their ranch. "We can build that orchard now," he said, his eyes bright with excitement, "and expand the cattle operation. We have enough hands to manage it, and Matthew is getting old enough to help with real work." "It is perfect," Olivia said, overwhelmed by the gift. "Preston, when I think of where I started and where I am now, it seems impossible. I have a husband I love beyond measure, 3 beautiful children, a thriving ranch, and a life I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams." "We built it together," Preston reminded her. "Every bit of it. You and me, side by side." They kissed in the fading light, 2 people who had taken a chance on each other through letters and faith, and had built something beautiful from that leap into the unknown. More years passed. Matthew grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. The twins were bright and adventurous, learning to ride almost before they could walk. The ranch prospered, weathering economic downturns and natural disasters because Preston and Olivia had built it on a solid foundation of hard work, careful planning, and mutual support. When Olivia was 35, she gave birth to their 4th and final child, a son they named Thomas. By this time, Matthew was 14 and helped his father run the ranch. The twins were 11 and already showing signs of the strong, capable women they would become. 4 children, Olivia said to Preston one evening as they watched their family from the porch. "When I was a frightened young woman in Philadelphia, I never imagined I would be blessed with so much." "Do you ever regret it?" Preston asked. "Answering that advertisement?" "Coming west to marry a stranger?" Olivia looked at him, this man she had loved for so many years, whose face she knew as well as her own. "Not for a single moment," she said honestly. "It was the bravest thing I ever did and the best decision I ever made." "I feel the same," Preston said, pulling her close. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Irving." As the years continued to pass, Preston and Olivia watched their children grow and make their own choices. Matthew eventually took over running the ranch, bringing new ideas and energy while respecting the foundation his parents had built. Emma married a young rancher from a neighboring property, and Grace shocked everyone by deciding to become a teacher, moving to Santa Fe to attend normal school. Thomas, the youngest, showed an aptitude for working with horses and began breeding them alongside the cattle operation. Preston and Olivia grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. On cool evenings, they still sat on the porch and watched the sunsets, hands clasped, talking about the day's events and reminiscing about their early years together. "You remember the day you arrived?" Preston asked one evening. They were in their 50s now, their hair graying, their faces lined with the stories of the years they had lived. "You looked so frightened stepping off that stagecoach." "I was terrified," Olivia admitted. "I was certain you would take one look at me and send me right back to Philadelphia." Preston laughed, the same warm laugh that had charmed her all those years ago. "And I was terrified you would take one look at the ranch and realize what a hard life you had signed up for. We were both so worried about disappointing each other." "And instead we exceeded each other's hopes," Olivia said, repeating the words Preston had said to her so many years ago. "Every single day," Preston agreed, kissing her temple. "Every single day you exceed every hope I have." They watched as Matthew rode by on his horse, heading out to check on the cattle. Emma and her husband lived on their own ranch now but visited often with their 3 children. Grace wrote letters from Santa Fe, full of enthusiasm for her teaching work. Thomas was in the barn working with a young colt. "We built something good here," Olivia said softly. "Not just a ranch, but a family, a legacy." "We did," Preston agreed. "And it all started with a leap of faith, 2 people brave enough to take a chance on each other." Olivia leaned against her husband's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, and reflected on the journey that had brought her here. That frightened young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Albuquerque so many years ago would hardly recognize the confident, capable woman she had become. But more than her own transformation, she marveled at the love she and Preston had built, the family they had created, the life they had forged together from nothing but hope and hard work. "I love you, Preston Irving," she said, the words as true and deep as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you, Olivia Irving," Preston replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." As the New Mexico sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, casting long shadows across the ranch they had built together, Olivia felt complete. She had found her home, her purpose, and her love in the most unlikely of ways, and she was grateful for every moment of the journey. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own contributions while honoring the foundation that Preston and Olivia had built. The story of the mail-order bride who feared she would disappoint, and the cowboy who said she exceeded every hope became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of love, courage, and partnership. Preston and Olivia lived long, full lives, surrounded by family, working the land they loved until their final days. When they were finally laid to rest side by side in a small cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, their children and grandchildren gathered to remember them not just as parents and grandparents, but as true partners who had built something beautiful together. The ranch they created still stands, a living monument to 2 people who took a chance on each other, who chose love over fear, who worked side by side through drought and hardship and joy, and who proved that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single leap of faith. And on quiet evenings, when the sun sets over the New Mexico landscape in brilliant displays of color, Those who know the story can almost imagine two figures sitting on the old porch, hands clasped, watching the beauty unfold, and thanking whatever providence brought them together all those years ago.